So a lot of optimization was applied. As mentioned before, feel free to apply more. There's one we can definitely introduce though, something I didn't do earlier because I wanted to finish this application first, but now it's time to optimize the way we load our routes. We can use lazy loading there. Let's have a look at the app.js file. We have the checkout route and the orders route, and both are not necessarily visited by us. We might never go to the checkout, we might never visit the orders area. Now the off part maybe also never gets visited. We can load them all asynchronously, lazily. The burger builder, not so much, that's our root page, we always visit that, but the other routes for sure. Now you learned how you can implement lazy loading with the React router. Feel free to add it on your own. I'll give you a short pause to pause the video and try this on your own, and then we'll definitely do this together and make sure that we load checkout orders and off only when we need them. So were you successful? Let's try it together. I'll first of all add my higher order component, async component, and in there the async component.js file. And I'll paste in the code I wrote in the routing section. So this async component function, which takes a function as an input, which it then executes down here. This function will use this dynamic import syntax and then give us a promise where we eventually get the component we wanted to load and where we then render this component. That's what we're doing here. Let's save this file. And let's now use it in the app.js file to load some components lazily. So for that, I'll import async component from, and now I need to go into my HOC folder, async component, and load it from that file there. And then I want to set up some components to be loaded lazily. The async checkout, for example. I'll name this constant async checkout and I'll use async component here. Now, we need to pass an argument to async component, and that argument should be a function. So I'll pass a function here, a function which will eventually return this import statement as a function, where we then can define a path to the component we want to load lazily. Of course, that's our checkout container in this case. With that, we can get rid of checkout here. Now let's replicate this twice for orders and off. So we have the async orders here too, where I will of course take the path from the old orders import and load that lazily. And then we can remove the original orders import. And now the same for off. Here I'll name this async off, take the path from the old off import, and of course replace that down here. And then we can get rid of the off import here too. Now we get all these async components. Let's now use them. So here we'll have async checkout. For async off, for off, we're going to add async off. And for the old orders component, we're going to add async orders. And now all that data, all these components are loaded only when needed. So let's save everything. Let's go back to our application and let's have a look at the application and see if it works as we would expect it. I open the network tab so that we can see any network requests, and we should see one when I click on authenticate. Indeed, we load chunk 2. Now if I do sign in here, submit, I'm back to Burger Builder. If I reload the app, I should still be signed in automatically, so this is still working. Now let's visit orders, and we download chunk 3 with the orders code. And now finally, let's build a burger to see if we also load the checkout part lazily. Let's click continue, and we download chunk 1, which is the checkout related code. And with that, we improved our application because we now only load the code we need to load and don't load any unnecessary code. That is a great improvement and one important step before we actually build our application for production. Though, as I also mentioned in the routing module, lazy loading is not always better. If the lazily loaded modules are very small, as they are in our app to be honest, you might not really gain anything from adding lazy loading. Still, I want to show it because it is an important concept and something you should consider in optimizing any application you build.